Hello everyone, my name is Amanda and welcome back to another video of the Plenty Mandy. Alright, so today we're going to talk about a problem that many Hoya's plants may face during the winter, which is root rot. So we're going to talk about what is root rot, we're going to talk about what causes it, we're going to talk about what are the symptoms, like how do you look for a root rot problem, and also we're going to talk about how to prevent it and how to treat it. So let's get started. So let's just define root rot really quickly, right? So literal meaning is your roots are rotten. So most of the time it is caused by fungal or bacterial infection. So what happens is you may have created an environment in your medium that those microorganisms thrive. And unfortunately, when they overproduce, they're gonna start rotting your roots. So that's essentially what root rot is. There's multiple reasons root rot may happen. So like I said earlier, it's mainly due to you may have created an environment that the microorganisms such as bacteria or fungus that they like. So they over-reproduce and then they start rotting your roots, right? So this kind of environment normally is referring to a more moist or wet environment. So meaning that if you overwater your plants or if you just keep your medium really wet or moist a lot of time, then the bacteria or the fungus may start to reproduce too much and they may rot your roots. Another reason that may cause root rot is inconsistent watering. So what happens is sometimes people would underwater and then they overwater and then they underwater again. So what's happened is if you continuously underwater your plants or if you underwater your plants in general, your roots may get dry and they may die, right? So at that point, they are no longer able to absorb water. So when you realize that, oh my God, like I underwater my plants, let me just like drown it with a lot of water. So at that point, because the root was already dead, so there's no way that they can absorb all those water that you just put in. So what's gonna happen is those water are just gonna sit in the medium and then rot your roots. Last but not least is you may be using too dense of a medium. So a lot of us if we just get the regular potting mix from garden center, sometimes it may be too peat based, like too much peat in the soil for the Hoya's preference, because overall they're epiphytic species, so they like really aerated medium. So I did film a Hoya mix medium video, I think a couple weeks ago. So if you're interested in what I use, go ahead and check that out. But like going back to the peat-based medium that you may be able to get in the garden center, they may be too dense for the Hoya, so meaning that they may retain too much moisture. And again, going back to the same point is if you have too much moisture, maintaining in the medium for an extended period of time, it will rot your roots. So that's basically some of the causes that you may experience root rot. So the reason that I say the problem is especially bad in winter is because imagine in the winter time, the light is a lot less. We have a lot fewer daylight hours. And when there is not enough light, the Hoyas won't be able to actually utilize all the water that you give them. So if you have so much less daylight and then you keep watering the same, so the Hoya will end up just sitting in those water that they aren't able to use because there's not enough food, aka the light. And again, it will rot the roots. So that's why this problem is especially bad in winter if you don't adjust your watering schedule accordingly. So again, I did film a winter Hoya care video last week. So if you are interested in check that out, make sure that you take a look of it, because I did go over like how to adjust your watering schedule accordingly during winter to prevent root rot. So now that we know what is root rot and what causes it, so we're going to talk about the symptoms of it, like how do you know if your Hoya's roots are rotten. So because it is very disrupting for the plants if you just keep taking the plants out and check the roots, right? So we're going to learn how to look for like symptoms or size of root rot, like just on the surface. So from my experience, the very first size of your Hoya roots are rotten is if your plant just stop growing all of a sudden. Given, this is very important, given that you are providing the same lighting, the same watering, the same fertilizing, the same humidity, like the environment is completely the same, and your Hoya has been growing, right? And then all of a sudden it just stopped. So if that's happened over like a period of time, like a few weeks to a few months, then you may have a problem with root rot. And the reason for that is because since your roots are rotten, the plants basically are not able to actually absorb nutrients and water from the soil. And what's happened is the plant just don't grow because it is not able to absorb, what it needs in order to produce new growth. So if you are given, again, very important, the same exact environment in terms of lighting, watering, humidity, fertilizing, etc., and your plants had been growing and then it stopped growing, then you may want to check the roots and see if there's any root rot. So obviously, there are still other symptoms that you can look for when it comes to root rot. So earlier when I say that the plants stop growing given the same environment, usually it's the very first sign. The leaves may still look green, it looks firm, and everything looks fine on the surface, but it stopped growing even though you're giving it the same growing conditions because the roots start to die off. So that is the earliest stage of root rot. So if you catch it right away, you can still save the plant, right? However, when the root rot start to worsen, you may see other symptoms. So that could be yellowing leaves. The leaves could look droopy and wrinkly. So all of those symptoms are caused by, again, the roots are dead. So the roots are not able to absorb any nutrients and any water for the plants. So that's why the foliage will start to look yellow or it's look wrinkly because the water and nutrients are just not there. So that would be the other symptoms that you may want to look for when it's come to root rot. Last but not least, if you unfortunately catch the root rot too late, right? Like you see, okay, the leaves start to die off, like it's yellowing, it's wrinkly, and then you finally decided, okay, I'm gonna put the plants out to check if the roots are actually dead, right? So how do you determine if the roots are dead? So I have the perfect example here because I just got this rehab plants from one of my friends, and the plant is suffering from root rot, like as of we speak. So he just doesn't really know what to do. So it's like, here, can you take care of this? So I got this plant that I can show you as a perfect example. So when you pull out the plant, this is what root rot look like. So you can see some of the roots start to brown, right? And more importantly is you're looking for all this woody thin, stringy appearance of the roots. Like you see all this stringy instead of a firm fat roots. So this is root rot, right? So sometimes so you can look at it, right? So most of the time when you look at it, you will already know. But sometimes you will have to actually touch it to see if the roots is rotten, because sometimes the roots can still look like white and fat, but then it's actually rotten inside. So what you want to do is, I like to do this thing I call a tug or pull test. So you want to use two of your fingers. I like to use my thumb and my index finger. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go to one of these roots, right? You see, for example, you see this brown one, obviously it's rotten, right? But if I'm not sure, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just pull down, and then you see the outside layer is coming off my finger, because basically this all outside skin, I hope you can see it. You see all this outside skin, it's being pulled out because the outside skin is already rotten. So all this stringy root hair life thing it's exposed. So at this point, they are no good. So this is what roots rot look like. A Hoya's lover nightmare look like. So so this is a Hoya Spa EPC 376, I think. And you can see, like I said earlier, the leaf is still kind of like firm and green, right? But it is not growing, or I would say like it have like a new shoot coming out, but it just stopped right there. So you kind of know that something is wrong. So when I told him to pull it out, he just saw all this stuff. So yeah, it's not good. So in comparison, this is what like a healthy roots look like. So I have this guy rooting in Necker. It's the same species. It's a Hoya Spa EPC 376. I have this guy rooting in Necker. And then you can see like the roots are white and firm and not stringy, right? So you see how like it's like bigger. So, and then also like it is attached to the lacquer, meaning that, it's grabbing onto something and it's growing. So you can see the difference of good roots, healthy roots, and here, it's easier to see like this actually, and root rot. So if you are at a point that you actually need to pull out the plant to check the roots, this is what root rot look like. I don't know why I'm smiling, because this is just so sad. So yeah, root rot sucks because roots are basically the most important part of the plant. It's like the brain of the plant, right? Because it's release hormone. It's basically absorb all the nutrients and water and control how the plants grow, right? So when root rot happens, it's really affects the health of your plants. If you catch it earlier, like I said, you may be able to save it. But if you catch it too late, you may just have to cut off the whole root system and reroot the plants, right? So there's a couple things that you can do to prevent root rot. So number one, it's very obviously, do not overwater your plants. So Hoya, generally speaking, there's always exception, right? But generally speaking, most of the Hoyas are epiphytic species. So meaning that they don't really get water all the time in nature. So imagine the plant is actually growing on trees, it's climbing on trees, and then when the rainfall come, right? It was basically drip down the bark or whatever it's growing on, and the Hoya may get some water that way, but very quickly all those water will drain to the soil under the forest. So that's basically how most of the Hoya grow. And that's why Hoya doesn't have a very extensive root system. You can see the roots are kind of just small and thin, right? Unlike most of the aroids, which have thick, juicy roots. So that's why Hoya doesn't have an extensive root system, because they just don't get water that often in nature. So if you translate the environment in nature to our home environment, you should remember that do not overwater your plants, your Hoyas, or do not keep the medium too moist for too long, because that's just not how Hoyas grow in the nature. So second thing you can do to add an extra layer of insurance is use really well draining mix. So I use mostly bark and perlite to grow my Hoyas, and I also do have some Hoyas in Necker. So those are the two mediums that I notice in my experience that works really well for Hoya, because it's well draining, it's very aerated, and the lacquer, as you know, they would really wick the moisture out. So that actually works really well. Last but not least is just, bear in mind that, when it's growing season, your Hoya may be able to use more water. But in winter, your Hoyas will not be able to use as much water. So also make sure that you adjust your watering schedule accordingly, according to the light situation mainly, and also make sure that you establish a consistent watering schedule. So of course, it will be great if we can prevent that from happening. However, if it's unfortunately actually happen, we can still save it, right? Sometimes we can still save it, right? So I'm gonna show you what I normally would do if I discover root rot like this one. So first of all, you obviously want to examine how bad the root rot is. So from what I can see, on this plant, most of the roots are rotten. There may be like one really good one, like right here, like this big one, right, like this white one right here. But like, yeah, most of the one is not really good at all. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab a pair of scissors and just make sure, like, every time when I use a scissor, I don't care if I'm like taking cutting to propagate or whatever, like make sure you always like sanitize with you know, alcohol. I sanitize with alcohol. Like, I know people use different things, but I use alcohol, and I just basically dilute some like 70% alcohol, rubbing alcohol, and then I just use the scissors, because, you know, you never know, you don't want to transfer like, you know, bacteria or pests or whatever, right? So anyway, like you can see, what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna cut off all the dead roots. Like, let me see if I can focus better. Yeah, there you go. So I'm just gonna like cut all of this like dead wood off. I know it's very dramatic, but trust me, like it needs to be done. So I'm just gonna cut off all this dead wood, right? So for sure, the really like thin and stringy one, like you really want to like just cut it all off. It's okay, it'll be fine. There we go. So let's see. Yep, cut it off. So I think this guy still have like some good roots, but most of them are no good, right? So I'm just gonna cut off as much bad roots as possible. Yeah, this is a very attention demanding task, because you also don't want to cut off the couple remaining good one, right? So as you can see, like I cut off like a lot of that root hair that you see earlier. So these are like, this thing here is just the moss that you know, I think he rooted his plants in. But yeah, so just cut off as much dead wood as possible, and then you can see, right? So like most of the one that left here, it's clean and white. So this is what you want. So once you determine that, okay, I cut off most of the black woods, right, or a lot of them, because you don't want it to continue to spread. So you really want to just like, you know, cut it off carefully. And then after that, what I normally would do is I would just rinse this. Like I would just, you know, turn on the water, and then I'm just gonna you know, use like lukewarm water, like don't use cold water or hot water, but I will just use lukewarm water to like just really like rinse it, give it a little bit of water pressure to like rinse off all the like bad stuff, right? So once you finish like washing it or rinsing it, I will use like new whatever medium you use, like, you know, throw away the old throw away the old soil. And if you use lacquer, like I recommend to boil it again. If you're unable to do that, at least I rinse it really well. I will also wash the pots. You know, if you decide to use a nursery pot or like net pot, just like wash it, and then from there, you basically just put this plant back into its new pot and new medium, and let it recover. And make sure that you observe it, you know, over like a week or 2 weeks of time, to make sure that, you know, the root is actually recovering instead of rotting more. So most of the time when you do it, the roots will new roots will eventually grow out and will recover. But again, you know, there's no 100%. Sometimes, you know, it will continue to rot. So that's basically how I would treat roots rot. I know some people like to use add like some fungicide, or like they like to spray it with like other chemicals, but I just personally don't do it. I don't find a need of it, but you know, of course, whatever work with your environment, go ahead and do that. That's all I have got for you today. I apologize of all the noise, like my dog wise, or like, you know, the construction wise, because there's a construction outside of my place that is going on right now, and my dog is really upset. about the noise. So there's so much noise in the environment. So I hope, you know, this is okay for you guys. So yeah, so that's basically, you know, all the information about root rot I have for you today. So I hope you find this informative. So if you have any experience yourself about root rot or any question about root rot, or like you have your own way to prevent or treat root rot, make sure that you leave in the comment below, because we can always learn from each other. As usual, if you like this video, make sure you click like. If you want more future video, make sure you click subscribe, and I will see you next time. Bye!